All right, everyone. Get ready for today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going literally out of this world.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
We're checking out the Artemis Cosmos SBS Utils library.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you've ever wanted to put your own stories into a spaceship simulation game,
Yes.
this is the one.
This is it. This is the one.
This is the deep dive for you.
You got it.
So we're not just talking about throwing in a few lines of text here and there.
Oh, no. We're talking about full-on immersive storytelling. Imagine you're piloting your ship, right? You're going through a nebula,
Oh, yeah?
and all of a sudden you see this, derelict vessel just floating.
Oh.
And with the SBS Utils library, you can make that encounter, come to life.
What, really?
Yeah, you can have flickering lights, creepy sound effects. You can even have the ship's log come to life with this whole backstory, and it's all triggered by what the player does.
Okay, see, that's what I'm talking about. You get me. That aha moment, wait, I can actually do that.
Yes.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves before we get into all of that.
Right.
How does this even work? What's going on behind the scenes to make this magic happen?
So the secret sauce here, it's a language called AST, stands for Multiple Agent Storytelling.
Okay.
Now, I know coding language, it sounds kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
But stick with me here. It's actually designed to be, I don't want to say easy, but it's approachable.
Okay.
Even if you are not a coder.
Right.
Think of it like writing, like a screenplay.
Okay.
But instead of it ending up on the big screen, it's happening in the Artemis Cosmos universe.
I see.
Your story is unfolding in the game.
So I'm setting the stage, I'm kind of introducing my characters, and then letting the story play out
Exactly.
instead of writing lines of code.
Yep, that's a great way to put it. And this is where the multiple agent part really comes in.
Okay.
You see, in most games, you're kind of stuck on this one path.
Right.
But MST lets you create stories for basically anything in the Artemis universe. Obviously, your player crew.
Right.
But also, that derelict ship we were talking about.
Oh, yeah?
The space station you might be docked at. Even, a rogue asteroid field. It could have its own story.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
A whole storyline for an asteroid field?
Yes. Right.
What? It's gonna, mess with my ship, send me cryptic warnings and stuff.
Exactly. It's all about that extra layer, right? That depth, that immersion in the Artemis experience.
Okay.
Let's say you're creating a quest.
Right.
It doesn't have to just involve the players. You could have that rogue asteroid field involved.
Yeah.
You could have, an NPC ship captain reacting to all the chaos that's going on.
Right.
Each agent is like an actor in your story.
I see.
They've got their own motivations, their own reactions.
I'm picturing, this huge space opera.
Yes.
And every encounter, every character is adding this whole other layer to the story.
It's it's kind of like those choose your own adventure books, but on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And MAMAS gives you the tools to manage all of that.
All those different agents, their individual stories, how they all intersect.
Right.
It could easily become a mess, but MAST keeps it organized.
See, that's what always trips me up with these things, right?
Yeah.
The idea, awesome,
Right.
love it.
Right.
But then you get into it, and
Yeah.
it's code, and
Yeah.
I'm like, ah.
Right.
So how does MAST make it, doable for people like me who are, creatively minded, let's say?
Well, remember we were talking about it being like a screenplay.
Yeah.
It uses a simplified syntax, so it's way more about storytelling and way less about complex coding jargon.
So instead of lines of code, it's more like scene headings and dialogue cues and, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's all about laying out that narrative in a way that feels natural and intuitive to you, the storyteller.
Okay, got it.
It's your story.
And I could even use MS to control how that story, unfolds, right? If I want to do, a really tense, dramatic moment.
Absolutely. MAMAST handles the pacing and the flow of your story beautifully.
Okay.
Let's say you don't want to give away a big reveal right away.
Right.
You can use a feature, it's called a yield,
Okay.
to create a pause, let the suspense build a little bit.
Ooh.
It's like when a movie cuts to black right at a cliffhanger.
Right.
Gives the audience that moment to catch their breath and go, what happens next?
Okay. Now that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how much control I actually have over the experience. But we've been talking about this kind of in a vacuum here.
Yeah.
How does this actually work within the Artemis game itself? You can't have the entire game grind to a halt every time a story beat happens, right? It's crazy to me. It's we're not just talking about stuff that's already programmed in, right?
Right.
With MST, it's you're making a system that can change based on what the players actually do, like, while they're playing.
Exactly. That's what's so cool about it. It's not just this straight line, this linear story. It's about making a space where stories can be dynamic, you know?
Hmm.
They can react to stuff. It's like setting up one of those chain reactions.
Okay.
Instead of dominoes, it's the player's choices, things that are happening in the game, even the other agents and what they do.
Okay, now I'm thinking, what if the players just, like, completely ignore that derelict ship we were talking about? Does that whole storyline just go away?
Not necessarily, no. You're the one calling the shots, right? You have all the control. You could make it so the story pauses, waits for a specific thing to happen, or you could have it keep going in the background, but like subtly, maybe it affects the game world in ways the players don't even realize at first.
Ooh, I like that. It's
Yeah,
like all these secret storylines, these little mysteries happening behind the scenes.
exactly.
It makes me think you could tell all kinds of stories with this. It doesn't have to be just like spaceships and adventures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You could do horror, you could do mystery, even comedy, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And
Memoirs doesn't care about genre. It's just a tool. It's like any tool. It depends on how you use it. Imagine like a scary scene, right? You're in your ship and the lights start going all weird, flickering. Or maybe the comms pick up these whispers and they change depending on where you are in the game.
ooh, see, now that's creepy. That's the good stuff. That feeling that the game's like alive and coming after you.
Exactly.
But easier said than done, right? I'm already thinking about all those agents and the stories and the events, and it just seems like, how do you even keep track of all that?
It can be a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why Masty has this really cool thing called tasks. Think of it like this. Each agent has its own to-do list.
Okay.
And these tasks, they're like the goals, the motivations for that agent. They decide how that agent interacts with the world. So going back to that derelict ship, it could have tasks like sending out a distress signal, reacting when the player gets close, maybe even like defending itself if things get crazy.
So these tasks are like little stories inside the big story.
Exactly. You got it. And Mast is amazing at keeping track of all those tasks. It schedules them, decides which are more important, makes sure everything's running smoothly, even if you have tons of agents, each with their own big, complicated stories, and they're all happening at the same time.
Wow. Okay, that's honestly really impressive.
Yeah.
But how does it decide which task is more important? Like, what if there's a really important story moment happening, but then at the same time, there's also a random encounter? What happens then?
Well, that's where things get really clever. Mass has these things called schedulers. Think of them like the stage managers for your story.
Right.
They work behind the scenes, constantly figuring out what's going on, which task needs attention right now, and they make sure everything works together.
So it's like a well-oiled machine, but instead of gears and stuff, it's all these stories and events fitting together perfectly.
Yeah. Exactly. It's kind of wild when you think about it, how Mast can handle all that complexity and still be, you know, relatively easy to use for people making the stories. You don't have to be like a coding master or anything to create something amazing.
See, that's what I like to hear, because I am definitely more of a story person than a code person. But even with all these cool tools, isn't there still a risk of, like, throwing too much at the players at once?
Right.
It's like any good story. It needs those highs and lows, those quiet moments so you can catch your breath.
Exactly. And Mass lets you do that. You're the director, right? You decide how fast or slow it goes, how intense it gets, the whole mood of the story.
Right.
You want crazy space battles, you've got it. You want something quieter, something more focused on the characters, you can do that too.
Okay, so for all our listeners out there who are like, all right, I'm ready to make my masterpiece. See what it did there?
I see it.
Where do they even begin?
Well, first things first, don't be afraid to, learn as you go. I know it can seem a little scary at first,
Sure.
but a master is made to be approachable. Remember, the SBS Utils library documentation, that's going to be your best friend.
Yeah.
It's got everything, explanations, examples. It even has tutorials to get you started.
It's like when you open up a new board game for the first time and you're like, whoa, okay, this is a lot.
Totally.
But then you read the rules and it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Exactly. And just like with board games, sometimes the best way to learn is to just jump in and play. Start small, Maybe a short story. Just one agent interacting with the players. Get comfortable with the basics of Mast, and then let your imagination go wild.
So, like, don't go building the whole Star Wars universe on your first try.
Exactly. Maybe start with a single planet or like a scene in a cantina. You meet this mysterious alien, they give you a cryptic clue, something like that. Once you get good at making those little encounters, you can start to make your world bigger, more agents, more stories, really crank up the complexity.
Okay, I like it. I'm getting ideas already. But what if you hit a wall? You're staring at your math script and nothing's coming to you. What do you do then?
Well, first of all, don't freak out. It happens to everyone. Sometimes all you need is a change of pace. Get outside, go for a walk, listen to some music, play some of your favorite games, anything to get those creative juices flowing again.
Oh, and don't forget, there's a whole community of Artemis creators out there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They've been through the same thing, right?
Definitely.
So don't be shy. Ask some questions. Share your ideas.
Exactly. That's what I love about the Artemis community. Everyone's so passionate, so creative. They're always happy to help each other out. It's like having a whole fleet of starships at your back. Everyone working together to see what's possible with interactive storytelling.
This is what I love about deep dives like this. We start with one thing. This time, it was the SBS Utils library. And we end up on this whole journey, talking about interactive storytelling, the power of community, the crazy potential of what we can make when we put our minds together.
I know, right? It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
And the best part is, this is just the beginning. The real fun starts when you, the listener, take over and start writing your story in the Artemis cosmos.
So here's something to think about as we warp out of here. What kind of story will you tell? What will your universe look like in Artemis cosmos? Because the possibilities, they really are endless. Until next time, keep exploring, keep playing around with it, and most importantly, keep telling those amazing stories.